us now is the senator from Alaska, Dan Sullivan. He sits on the Environment and Public Works Committee. And, you know, I feel like we could have this argument every year. It comes up again. But what about this particular project, the Willow project, makes you think it should be approved?
Well, good morning, Dana and Bill. Look, we had a meeting with the president last week, and our argument was this is exactly the kind of energy project President Biden should support given his administration's priorities. It has the highest environmental standards in the world, lowest greenhouse gas emissions of any major project in the world, Dana, and that's according to the Biden administration's own environmental impact statement. It's supported strongly by the vast majority of Alaska natives, so if they really care about racial equity and environmental justice, this is a project that they should support. Similarly, the vast majority, heck, every union in Alaska, all the building trades in America, the big unions that support building oil and gas in our country, they're 100% supportive. 2,500 jobs for this project, 75% of which will be union jobs. And finally, the national security implications of this project is you guys always talk about, and I emphasize a lot, Putin and Xi Jinping fear American energy dominance. And, you know, it's really hard to square what the Biden administration has been doing. They recently lifted sanctions on Venezuela. We're now importing 100,000 barrels a day of oil from Venezuela, a terrorist regime with horrible environmental standards, horrible human rights record. And, you know, that just makes no sense. It's national security suicide to be relying on dictators like those from Venezuela, Saudi Arabia. Right now, the Biden administration on energy is treating Venezuela, a terrorist regime, better than Alaska. It shouldn't be that case. So we're hoping the president makes the right decision. I think for all these reasons, it's something that he should be supporting.
A quick question. Do you think he heard you?
Well, look, you know, I always say you get in the Oval Office, Dana, you know this very well. You're respectful to the president. We appreciated his time. It was an over an hour-long meeting. I will say they were mostly in listening session, but we raised some important issues. We know that the lower 48 environmental groups are pressing them really hard. But, you know, we had a press conference last week with the vast majority of some of the top Alaska Native leaders in our state. And they're saying that this is kind of the second wave of colonialism, eco-colonialism, where lower 48 groups are coming up telling Alaska natives how to live their lives. It's quite condescending. And, you know, we were making that point to him as well.
So I have a question. Recently, the president has decided that perhaps either by the merits or because of politics, he is moving away from far left progressive positions. One, you're starting to see it on immigration. That's making the left mad, but he's starting to do it anyway. On crime, right? They realize that they have a problem on crime, and now you see a lot of Democrats saying, oh, okay, defund the police was a terrible idea, and maybe now we need to do something. Is it possible, and maybe you could be hopeful, maybe I'm just being a little too optimistic, that that same trend could happen with energy?
Well, I'm certainly hopeful, and I think this decision is going to signal the way in which the president is going to be moving on energy. I think the brutal invasion of Ukraine by Russia has revealed the folly of the Biden administration's energy policies, which, as you mentioned, Dana, are driven by the far left to shut down the production of American energy. And then when prices went up, which they did primarily because of the Biden administration's policies on working families, they went overseas to start begging from dictators and some of our adversaries for oil. I think the vast majority of Americans say, wait a minute, shouldn't we produce in America with the highest environmental standards, with our workers, our unions, and by the way, getting revenues for America, for our governments, state of Alaska, local communities in Alaska, the federal government? Why should we be funding Saudi Arabia and Venezuela for energy? So I hope that you're right. We'll see with this decision. Like I said, we've put forward the arguments that we think the president should approve this. And this does have the highest environmental standards, lowest emissions of any major project in the world. That was the president's own professional scientists that said that in the environmental impact statement that came from the Biden administration.
All right, we're going to follow it. Senator Dan Sullivan, thank you for joining us this morning.